Thank you very much. Yeah, so very warm welcome from me, from the Eberswalde University for Sustainable Development. My name is Angela Dichte. I am working in the ConnectED project, which is a new project here at our university. If you are interested, I can tell more about this project at the end of the session. For now, I would like to, welcome you to our first webinar session in this project. And I would like to shortly introduce you to our two speakers that are with us today and who will take over in 2 minutes about share their experiences with us and invite us for a discussion about our experiences and questions and so on. So our two speakers are Manuela Pelz and Jakob Wegener. Both are also working here at the Eberswalde University for Sustainable Development. Manuela is the head. I wanted to click to the next presentation. Yeah, so I hope you can see also the faces. I don't know if this is in the way. It is, I guess.
It works.
That works. Okay, thank you very much. So Manuela Pelz is the head of our Center for International Affairs, which was just created this year, actually, evolving from the split of our former international office. I think most of you know this kind of structure. So this international office was distributed into two separate, but of course also linked structures at the HNEE, our university. And on the one hand, they created an exchange office, which is mainly dealing with, for example, Erasmus Plus mobilities for students and staff, but also supporting our international office, our international students at our university. And then on the other hand, the Center for International Affairs was created, which is which Manuela Pelz is actually heading, and which is aiming to integrate internationalization in all spheres of our university, and also to strategically plan and manage partnerships, international partnerships, of course, mainly, and to support international projects like ours. So there's another person coming in. And Jakob Wegener, our second speaker, actually our first speaker, is our EU officer at our university as part of the INNO support team, which is a service unit for research, startups, and transfer. And in this role, Jakob Wegener is the central person actually for everything related to EU funding. So he is scanning the EU horizon for new funding calls and sharing this, his news and new calls, and inviting colleagues to join and develop projects, and then also supporting, of course, the colleagues in developing projects, but then also in implementing projects through guidance and advice. Okay, so therefore, both are really important people at our university, especially for people like us who are working in international projects, and for whom the development of partnerships is actually a daily joy, but of course also challenge but task. And therefore, I'm really happy that both of them had time and were willing to share their experiences and their thoughts about this relation between internationalization, research, partnerships. I don't want to take more time. As I said, if you're interested to learn more about this project, I can come back to that later on. But for now, I would like to hand over to Jakob, and I will give you now the rights. We didn't. Okay. Foliensteuerung and Jakob. So now both of you have the right to to move the slides. And Jakob, can you try if it works?
No, unfortunately, it doesn't work until now. No, now it seems to be working, but not immediately.
Okay.
No, it's not working actually. Manuela, maybe you were changing one slide, but from my laptop, it is not working.
So who is moving now the slides? Was it Manuela? Okay.
I was moving.
Okay.
Manuela, what we will do is I will just ask you to move to the next slide then, yeah?
Okay.
So I think it would be nice to start with the very first slide with the title slide of the presentation. Thank you. So good afternoon to all of you out there. Welcome to this little talk about internationalization through research. It is a topic which concerns, I think, all universities, and yeah, we'll give our perspective on how internationalization can be achieved, what it is actually good for, what the purpose behind internationalization could be, and also what problems may occur on the different pathways to internationalization. Next slide, please, Manuela. So just to give you a kind of idea who is talking to you. So what our perspective, Manuela and my perspective, is on this topic. We're a very small university, actually. We're a university of applied sciences with around 2,300 students, quite international from around 60 nations. And our research focus lies in sustainability, as the name of our university suggests. So the official research foci, although these are actually about to change, so there's a commission which is about to update these foci. But as we're talking, the foci are sustainable development, sustainable production and use of natural resources, and the sustainable resource management. So this is more the last focus may sound a bit very similar to the second one, but the last is actually more related to protected areas, so natural reserves, biosphere reserves. Next slide, please, Manuela. Thank you. So internationalization is taken quite seriously here at our institution. Manuela is full-time responsible for this task. And our president is really endorsing this very much, which is just really nice, which I personally find very nice, very productive. And as a consequence, we have around 85 active cooperation partners right now. So these are only the partners whom we are actually working at present. So we have a memoranda of understanding, or we have ongoing cooperations. Of course, there's plenty of other partners with whom we publish or with whom we have done joint project activities in the past, but these are the active cooperations, so to speak. So it's not enormous, but for a small institution like ourselves, it's actually quite demanding to take care of all these relations all the time. Next slide, please, Manuela. So, of course, internationalization is a lot of work. Internationalization needs special special attention if you really want it to succeed. So before you undertake this kind of effort, you would like to know, why should I actually internationalize? And I think the answers are more or less the same for every university. The first reason is to increase the attractiveness for students and staff. And there's a nice study which just came out in Urban Science from Georg Udaki and colleagues, which shows that this is actually becoming more important the more remote your university is. So if you're a rural university, which has not a very big visibility because the city to which it is connected geographically is not so well known, then actually this point of increasing your attractiveness through internationalization becomes much more important for a small rural university like ourselves. Therefore, it is really essential. The second reason why internationalization is important, of course, is to facilitate the access to funding programs. If it's an international program, then of course you need international partners, and so internationalization can help you there. It's quite evident. And the third point, which is maybe the most important, at least from a research perspective, is that internationalization also translate into an increase in excellence, both in research and teaching. And this can actually be shown empirically by linking the quality of publications which are produced either by authors from one organization or from different organizations, but from one nation, or from different organizations from different countries. And this has been done in a study by Benevent and Perez, which I just cited below on this slide, just to tell you that there is actually evidence for the efficiency of internationalization in increasing the excellence of science of research done in your institutions. Next slide, Manuela. Thank you. So what are we going to talk about today? We decided to split the topic into two major parts. And my part is the one on the left, the opportunities part. So what research can do and how we can use research to actually increase internationalization. So this is about either leveraging professional networks of individuals working at your university, so especially researchers, of course, and or on the other hand, using institutional connections between your institution and other institutions to actually help the individual researchers create networks, grow their networks, and form a meaningful and powerful research consortia. And the second part then will look into the realities, as we put it on this slide, which actually means the difficulties. So things like competition, how to deal with missed success, how to deal with a rejection of a proposal, how to overcome intercultural differences, and of course, which is maybe the most important point, how to combine this task of internationalization or of consortium construction with all the other tasks which you also have on your desk. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And I will start with the opportunities part, Manuela. So just as a further introduction, so to speak, to manage your expectations, this is not about how to win Horizon calls. I think there is a lot of presentations about that. With some of you, we already had meetings about that. Some of you already were here at HNEE, and we had seminars about that. Summer schools, also organized by Angela and colleagues. It was a very nice experience, but today we're going to talk about the more general, the more strategic level of internationalization. This is just to put it into a framework. Manuela, next slide. So, as I already hinted, from our perspective, from my perspective, there are two different ways in which internationalization of research can be achieved. And one is by passing through the personal networks of researchers. Every researcher, of course, has networks of colleagues that he has trained with, that he has worked with, that he has published with, that he has met at conferences or in international organizations that he or she may be working with. And these networks can be exploited to the use not only of these individual researchers, but to the use of the organization as a whole. And we will see how this is done. And the second pathway is that strategic institutional partnerships can be formed either out of the blue or because of personal links between either high-ranking officials of different institutions or groups or individual researchers from the different institutions. And these strategic partnerships can then be exploited to bring together the staff, the research staff, but also the administrative staff of these organizations and do things together. So these are two different pathways. Of course, these are extremes of a continuum, actually, because normally things will be in between both. So there's going to be a mixture of both methods. But for clarification, I think it may be useful to look at them separately. Manuela, next slide, please. So the first of these pathways is to use the researchers' own networks for internationalization. And this pathway is really straightforward. So you start with a researcher. Actually, you do not need to tell him to make contacts. Normally, if he's a talented, ambitious person, he will do so by himself. And yeah, in my experience, it is not necessarily the most senior researchers who are best at making contacts and having great networks. Often it is very junior researchers, but they need to be ambitious. They need to have the drive. They need to be communicative. If they're postdocs, it is good if they have done some research abroad within the framework of their PhD, or if they have published some of their work together with international colleagues. And of course, if these researchers are then helped to write a first international proposal, gain this proposal, they will have a first international consortium, and they will have contacts within this consortium. And the nice thing about these personal contacts is that they grow exponentially. So everybody among these persons that we meet in our first consortium knows new persons, and these persons then become indirectly available to ourselves. We can contact them through our colleagues. You all know how it works. And in no time, let's say in 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a whole herd of researchers whom this one individual knows. Manuela, next slide. And so our role as research managers is really to help the researchers do this first step, write their first proposal. And of course, for this, you need international funding programs. As I said at the beginning, this is not about increasing your chances in succeeding in any of these programs, but it is really about the general framework of internationalization. But still, I thought it useful to name a few funding lines which I think are particularly useful for this kind of network building international cooperation projects. Of course, the biggest one is Horizon Europe, and most evidently a Pillar 2. So this part of Horizon Europe, which is meant for collaborative research on societal challenges. You all know the well-known clusters. So these are the typical cluster calls. And many of you will be aware that the 2026 and 2027 work programs for Pillar 2 have just come out, also for the missions. So there is plenty to read. There's a lot of opportunities right now. I think it's 14 billion euros, which have been promised in funding over the coming 2 years. It's not very competitive. Most parts of it are not very competitive. There are a few topics, there are a few calls, especially the two-stage calls, which are very competitive with maybe 50 proposals for 2 funded proposals, so a rate of 1 to 25. It's not very high chance of actually winning there, but many topics are actually not so competitive. You have a chance of winning of maybe 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. So quite a good chance of actually winning a grant if you choose the right topic. And this is really extremely good for networking because the consortia are big, and many of you I know have already some experiences in building this kind of consortia. We are in some consortia together, so this is maybe not new for you, but from my personal biography, I've been a researcher in several EU consortia before, and it is really extremely valuable, the kind of connections you get from this. So I would say that from my scientific network, about half is coming from Horizon Pillar 2 projects. It's really a very good networking opportunity. Then, because this presentation was originally thought to be mostly for research managers in the area of life sciences and nature conservation and agriculture and forestry, of course, there is the LIFE program of the European Union. Unfortunately, LIFE will not be continued under the new multi-annual financial framework. So LIFE, we're about to say goodbye to LIFE, but there is one last call in 2026, which may be an opportunity. LIFE is not for funding research, though. LIFE is for funding practical work related to nature conservation in particular. But scientists can participate, they can be funded, and it is also very good to extend your network to other stakeholders, so especially from the industry or from the administration. This is what LIFE is really good for. The funding rate is not 100%. Normally it's 70% in the in the standard applications. So you have to find some co-funding, but still it's a very nice program. Then there's partnerships. Unfortunately, I think partnerships are not all open to Ukrainian partners. Some are and some are not. This depends on the decision of the Ukrainian funding organizations whether they would like to participate in a partnership or in a call, because these partnerships are co-funded by national funding organizations. So the EU is giving some money, and the rest of the money is coming from national sources. And so this is for smaller consortia, which is nice if you start on building your own consortium. It is nice to start with 4 or 5 partners instead of starting with 20, as you would have to in Pillar 2 projects. They're administratively quite challenging, especially in the full proposal phase, because you have to respect the different funding rules of all the national funding agencies that give money to the partnership. So this is quite complicated. And they're generally quite competitive because they are so small, because the pre-proposal usually takes very little time and very little effort. They're really competitive. So it's really hard to succeed there, but if you do, it can be very, very nice. And then there is one opportunity which is, I think, a little underexploited, especially in our area of expertise. So the green area, as I would call it, and this is bilateral projects funded by the National Academies of Sciences. So in Germany, this would be the German Research Foundation, and in Ukraine, the partner is the Ukrainian National Academy of Science. And so this is actually open to all topics. So you can suggest your own topic. You do not have to wait for a call which spells out your research interests. You can suggest your own topic, which is really a huge advantage. In principle, or if you follow the letter of the of what is said on the web pages of the funding organizations, in this case, it is more for fundamental research than for applied research. But there can be exceptions, especially for universities of applied science in Germany. The DFG, the German the DFG is really fond of applications from universities of applied science because they have a political guidance to spend some of their money. I think it is 5% of their budget on projects from universities of applied science. So the funding rate is actually quite high. And as the German partner is also funding the Ukrainian partner, so in this case, the German government is paying also for the expenses of the Ukrainian partners. I think it should also be high for German-Ukrainian partnerships involving universities of applied science. And it is usually for two partners only, so one per country. I think this is actually an opportunity which is quite nice for starters. Next slide, Manuela. So as this talk is actually about internationalization and how to use these networks that we have helped the researchers to build or which the researchers bring or have built by themselves. Now the question is, of course, how to turn these networks into a benefit for the organization. And can you click once more, Manuela? So our task as research manager, we're the research manager here. You can see us. We're really clever and actually quite powerful people because we have a lot of influence on what is happening in our universities, and we have much more influence actually than most people think on the success of our researchers. So our task is to look around with a magnification glass and screen these partnerships that our researchers have made and find some which show good overlap with the strategic orientation of the organization, topic-wise or also geography-wise, and which are recurring. So if it is just one person in one project that our researcher is partnering with, this may be too weak to build an institutional connection on it. But if it is actually recurring, so if there is a group of people from both universities doing research again and again together in different projects, then actually this can lead to an institutional partnership. Next slide, please, Manuela. And actually, the fact that we can talk to each other today is the outcome of just this. Not sure that research managers played a huge role in this case. I think it is really mostly self-propelled from the energy and enthusiasm of the researchers involved. But in every case, this ConnectED project, which is organizing this event today, is the outcome of such a great cooperation. So it's really an example of what I was just telling you about. And this photo was taken just last week here in Eberswalde, where many of you met. Manuela, next slide. So we're coming back to this slide. You already know it because we're changing to the second pathway to internationalization through research, and that is the use of strategic partnerships to help the individual researchers to internationalize. Next slide, please. So again, there is a certain chronology to this process, of course. It all starts with building an institutional partnership. This can be done in many ways, either because high-standing officials from different universities know each other, or because people like Manuela screen the horizon and find out that there is an organization out there which is actually having very similar and synergistic targets to our own. Or it can also be formed through cooperation in Erasmus projects, for example. So there's many ways to build an institutional partnership. But once we have this partnership can actually be used to help researchers internationalize. And this can, for example, be done at the occasion of delegational visits. So if there's a delegation from one university coming to another, usually the research managers from the welcoming organization will be informed or will be involved even in organizing this. And they will have an overview of ongoing consortia which are forming, ongoing project ideas, or they have an overview of topics and professors or researchers at their universities, at their organizations. And so they can suggest uh, cooperations actually. And more frequently than one may think, this is actually working. And it is a very nice feeling for a research manager like myself if you suggest to a member of a delegation, well, would you like to meet our professor so and so? I think he may have different ideas and he's preparing a horizon proposal. And then you see that actually the proposal you get onto your desk is containing this cooperation, is containing this partnership that you have helped to bring to life. It is a very, very nice feeling. Yeah, and then of course, from these suggested cooperations, project ideas develop and ideally consortia develop, and our researchers can benefit from the existence of this institutional partnership for their own purposes. Next slide, please, Manuela. This is our research manager again, just pouring oil into all of these linkages. Yeah, again, as before, some funding lines for fostering institutional ties. Of course, institutional relationships do not necessarily require a lot of funding in order to be created. So normally it's enough to send an MOU, which may require some traveling of some officials from one place, from one university to the other, but can also be done without. But if you want to deepen the cooperation between institutional partners, this can be done through funding for common activities, of course. And maybe the biggest program in that respect is the European University Alliances, which is actually a part of Erasmus+. Our university is not part of an alliance, although we're looking into this right now. So we're considering it right now. I think we can say that we would like to be a member of a university alliance. It's not so easy to become a member. Unfortunately, it's only open to universities from the European Union, but Ukrainian institutions can associate. So they cannot become full members, but they can associate, so they can share the activities, although they cannot share the funding, unfortunately. And this is really a very strong institutional integration, which is funded here, which is furthered by these university alliances, mostly in the teaching sector, so with international study programs, but also covering research activities with joint research foci and joint research labs, and small competitions for consortia applying for cooperation and research between the different universities of the alliance. It requires a lot of commitment. So this is really something that you have to want very, very dearly in order to do it. It is a very serious decision to take part in an alliance. There is another project which requires much less commitment, but which can also be very useful and also very flexible, especially. So it's really a very flexible funding tool, which is the MSCA Staff Exchange, Marie Sklodowska-Curie Action Staff Exchange. Don't know whether you know this program. It's not very well known. The 2026 call has just been launched, I think, yesterday or Monday. It's ideal for developing project ideas because actually there's only money for researcher and academic staff mobilities. So you can move around, you can do some very first experiments together, and you can develop consortia, or you can also develop institutional alliances, if you like. You can also team up with the industry, so industry partners are also eligible here, and it's actually a very nice thing. And this is fully open to Ukrainian universities as well. Then there is one special thing, which I'm very certain that many of you know, because we're in a consortium together with some of you, which is the widening calls under Horizon Pillar 2. And these are especially for cooperation between, well, let's say between Eastern and Western countries within the Horizon funding area, although the EU would term it differently. So it's actually very well adapted to cooperation between us, for example. And these widening calls, they give some money for pilot research action, but much money for capacity building and well, for enabling the partners to produce strong consortia in the future. And one example is this Fornix consortium that has been formed on the initiative of a Ukrainian university, actually. Next slide, please, Manuela. And I would like to end this part of my talk, which is on the use of institutional relationships for building international relations for researchers, by another example, which is actually not involving cooperation between ourselves and the Ukrainian institution, but between ourselves and the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. And I'm not sure whether the MOU was signed in 2023 or 24, but it was actually really very recently. And well, it was signed on the basis of a huge overlap in research interests at our universities mostly. And since then, these overlaps have actually led to two very strong proposals for Cluster 2, for Pillar 2 Horizon Europe consortia. And so this is just to illustrate how these very strategically created, maybe even somehow artificial cooperations can suddenly pop into life and can actually be used to the benefit of the organization. So this is just to show that it is actually working, and it is very satisfying to see that it actually works. And I'm sure it must be more satisfying for Manuela than for myself. I only suggested the cooperation between the different researchers here. Manuela was actually involved in creating the partnership in the first place. Yeah, Manuela, next slide, please. No, this is the first slide again, I think. Up, 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 Stop. Back. Yeah, okay. With this, I would like to end my part of this talk. As you may remember, today's talk has two parts. Mine was the left one. Now we change to the right one, which is about the realities, all the difficulties that you encounter when trying to internationalize. And with that, I give the word to Manuela and thank her for changing the slides.
Thank you, Jakob, and welcome from my side as well. I hope you can hear me well. And I would start with my part, expectation management. Internationalizations for research is a very broad topic. And very important for us was also to give you a bit an insight in what we experienced, which expectations are often hindering also a good cooperation, a good proposal, and so forth. And the first quotation I wanted to give you was, not every good cooperation should become a horizon proposal. Capacity, not motivation, is usually the bottleneck. And by saying that, capacity, not motivation, we're coming to our first part before the application to prepare what needs to be done on an institutional level. So first of all, you should be very clear about the institutional goal, and that depends a bit on which position you are. We have now a broad audience. So it can be you're working in an international office, you are yourself a vice president, you could be a professor. So we have a very different approach on research, on your institutional goals, and so forth. But if you want to internationalize through research, it should be clear to which your university strategic goal that fits, so that you can not only combine capacity questions, but also that you are straight in support that you need. That brings us in a moment to our second point, support and involvement. But the institutional goal is also valid for research questions, questions of funding, internal funding spent, and so forth. Because depending on the goals of your institution, they will also focus the money and the spending. So that should be put in perspective. Support and involvement is a very, very strong aspect you should take into consideration. Which resources are needed and which are actually available. So often people think when they apply for these kinds of bigger research projects, I'm just writing a proposal, and that's not the case. Often you have funding behind that. You need a finance department that can read certain documents. You need also other people involved in these partnerships, as you can see with Jakob and me, who are involved from often beginning of proposals to the end of the project when you have your last report. The question is always at the beginning, who's needed and who's available, because we all face the same problem in universities. We don't have enough people for all the ideas we have. So that should be also clear. And often in different departments or also with other researchers, they have their own timetables, their own plans. And it can be that you're just not planned in their timetables. Time is a very, very important part that you should also try to create as a time for your research. You need a protected research time to do research, also in international research. And often in your daily life and in your institution, you can have this through, we have a research semester for our professors, or that you plan a certain time just for doing this. So we are coming from a University of Applied Science. So here we have a very high amount of hours that our professors has to give as teaching. These teaching hours are no research time. So they need to really focus very strongly on their timetable. That's why also we note from other universities worldwide that you mostly have not just teaching, you have other duties that you have to fulfill. And then it's very important to plan this ahead. Language capacity is also always an underestimated problem. If you write an international proposal, you are often asked to have basic English proposal writing capacities, or that you know someone who can do it, or that you know how to use an AE in a way that is really supporting you. But if you don't have it, it doesn't mean you don't need to apply. It just means you have to get these skills, or you have to get someone who can support you in these skills. But these are the 4 aspects that institutional-wise should be considered. If you are a vice president, you can also say, okay, I'm searching for the people with who have no language capacity in English in the way that it's supporting international research. So I'm sending them on language to learn the language, to learn how to write. You can send them to language courses. You can put it as an educational task for their personal development as well. So depending on the position you are in and what you're doing, If you do internationalization from an institutional perspective or on a personal perspective, you have to take the language capacity into consideration. On a project level, you start, of course, mostly with a partnership. But then you also have to ask yourself, who do we already trust or have a working relations with? That is two different points. Trust can be also on a personal level. So you already had projects that went well, you know, the people in person, you know that you can rely on them. However, mostly in a personal relation, you don't have the working relation, and that can be something very different. A person can have a very different working attitude than a personal, emotional attitude. So, it is always wise to be very careful in the partnership you choose for an international research, that you're really careful about, is it just a partner that we have for a long time? Is it a partner that we trust? For instance, with the University of Saskatchewan, which Jakob just explained, we didn't have a long-standing relationship. It's not built on a long-standing personal relationship, but however, they built a trust between the professors, and they started to work together on an institutional level. We connected research offices together. We started to build connections within the professors, and then the next step started. The trust came from an institutional side, and you can have this as well on a personal side. And then you have to decide if the institution that you have in front of you have the capacity to do it with you, and are already reliable in what they want to achieve. Roles and responsibilities is another thing that you have to make clear before the project. You have to clarify which roles are needed and who is filling the positions. You can have very different roles in these projects. Jakob just showed you the different kinds of possible applications. And in all these applications, you have people who are having the lead, who making administrative work, who making just research, who just contributing to a work package, and so forth. So it's very important to know who's playing which roles. When you come new to a consortia, it's also very important to understand your role. Who is the lead? What is the task of the other people? Where's your place inside? It's also important to make a roles and responsibility check that you get the work done, so that it's for sure not you have just someone who's really motivated and eager to do so and is making all the work, but that this person can also distribute between the partners. We recommend very strongly to get clear about the admin setup. Internationally seen, we have all different systems, very, very different systems, how we set up contracts, procurements, documentations, and so forth. And it makes sense. Also, most people don't think about it, but it's very important if you start the project that you clear up how you want to do all these little things. That are really little things, but they're important, because if you don't have one space where you save your documents, where you share your documents, where it's clear what is your procedure, you will stuck on it, you will struggle about it, and it will take you a lot of time. Also contract-wise, we often experience that every partner has a different way of doing contracts. For example, our Spanish partners, they like it to have two languages, Spanish and English. However, we are a German institution, and Spanish is not our main language. Our main language is German. So who can sign a Spanish contract and so forth? So to deal with it beforehand, what is from an administrative side really important to prepare is not a waste of time. It takes around 10 to 20 minutes maybe to get the main questions done, but it will save you hours of headaches. The reflective practice is very important too, because most people forget that to write an application and to write a proposal and to have a good idea doesn't mean that you get it. So it makes sense to already deal with a reflection for what happens when we don't get it. What happens when we get a rejection? How can we use the proposal strategically again for other projects? So don't focus only on one way, focus on a different way possibility. If you're really eager to bring this topic forward, if you're really interested in working together, then it should not be just bound to this application or to one. The internal expectation management gave me a good reason to use an unicorn. And often we are faced with these 4 ideas by our partners or by also researchers and people who manage universities. A strong idea is enough. A partner invitation means we will be funded. Writing is the main work, and rejections means we fail. However, we would like to put it into perspective. A strong idea is always necessary, but never sufficient. You can have the best idea in the world if you don't get it in a good proposal, if you don't get it in the project in a good way, and if you're not convincing in the end, then it's not enough. You should always start with, I have a good idea, and the idea is good, but it's not just stopping there. Take into consideration that it also takes a time. As we said already, a partner invitation doesn't mean you will get fund. It's still, you need to find out the roles, the match of evaluation criteria. You have to think about institutional ambitions, about personal expectations. So you're entering maybe a partner and they have their own ideas of what they want to do in internationalization, where they want to go and so forth. And they may be also not in this same role like you, really being assured that they can be successful. Writing is the main work. You don't forget the coordination, the alignment, the administration. That takes a lot of effort. I wrote at least the same effort because often you will spend also a lot of time going through this jungle and working this out. In a lot of projects, therefore, you have a project coordinator who's just focusing on this to keep the back of the researchers free. However, you need to, in a consortium of different people, that is not just 2 professors working together on one topic, 2 researchers, but it's a bigger consortium. It will become also more work administratively. Rejection means we failed. No, rejection is normal. Develop, as we said also before, a rejection plan. Think about what would be an alternative. Think about rejection as something that is could happen to you. That it doesn't matter how good your idea is, that you need a plan B. So by managing your expectations a bit, you're focusing also on the topics that are important for you. What we often experience, and I take this now as a typical situation, an example of an Ukrainian researcher who's invited to join a Horizon Europe consortium as a partner. And often we experience that then researchers or universities think, it means we are likely to fund. If we agree, our institution will support this and so forth. But often their experience also, we experience this ourselves, that a consortium is already largely defined. That means roles, budget, influence, it's all limited. And then you also go back to your university and you have all the approvals, you have all the capacity constraints and so forth. So it is always reasonable to clarify roles before committing. Work package, coordinator, contributor at the university. Ask early about budget, workload, and decision-making power. That's very important. And also, especially with the lump sum policy of the European Union, which gives you the freedom of spending this money for your project without having to always put in every bill. It is often mistaken. You still have to fulfill the work packages. The money, the budget is bound to the work package. So it's very important that everything you do with this money fulfills the work packages. Otherwise, you have to give it back. Only because it's a lump sum, you cannot just keep it. On the other hand, you also have to make sure that the budget is not just enough, but it's also not too much. Often we experience that people stand at the end of their projects with a lot of budget and don't know what to do. Take the workload and also who makes the decision into account. And very interesting part is the expectation between the researchers and the institutions, because mostly researchers are not so strongly involved in administrative processes. So when they come last minute to an administration, they often feel how the door closes in front of their face. And that's not because the administration doesn't want to help, but they also are bound to their rules, their limits, and so forth. So we have to hear a gap that we have to bridge always in the beginning by a good communication with the internal institution. What is also an important point is the agreement in writing. So it's especially if you're working on a personal level, and you know the people for a long time, it is still valid and it's still very good to have everything agreed in written, because you cannot know how the project proceeds. If a person, for instance, which I hope it will not happen to any one of you, but dies suddenly, it can change the entire project, and then you don't have any agreement and you cannot prove what you agreed on. So it just happened to us last year that one of our partners died, unfortunately, unexpectedly in a project, and everything that was agreed on in Orwell was not having any value. And the professor, and he had a long-standing friendship, so in this moment he had to start from zero, and also finding someone who believes on the agreements. 1 second, I'm searching my cursor. So, as I said, set expectations early is one of the things we would like you to take into consideration, also with the partners. And we would give you some of the points that are on a practical side really to consider. It's a sign-off process. I give you the example of our university. Every document that is signed in the name of the university has to be signed by our president. And then we have the rule, the chain of signature, in case he is not here. Other universities work differently. Then the departments or the faculties, they have a different power on signing certain documents, or even professors. This has to be settled before, so that it's clear how much time you need. For an Erasmus proposal, you need often the signatures of presidents and vice presidents for research and so forth. And then it needs to be clear they want to know what they're signing, how much time do they need beforehand. You will hardly get signatures last minute. Or if you get them, you can know that they had a big trouble getting it and a big fight in their offices. Because, of course, if you have a long proposal, the person who signs wants to know what they're signing. And so it makes sense. Every institution has an own signing process. If you work internationally, in Colombia, it takes 11 signatures to have one MOU signed, because I think it was 9 lawyers that looked from university side on this contract. So you never know how it is in the other country and in the certain institution. So make this clear in the beginning. Roles, I think we made this clear as well. Define the roles, set the expectations. That makes everything much more easier. Also define the publication practice. Mostly people think that their experience on a national level, or also their experience with their closest colleague, is what everyone else is doing. So it makes sense to be very clear on what you expect, what the partner expects, and what can be done realistically, because you don't know if they're doing it the same way you are used to, or you are also not sure if it's what they want and how they want to do it. So it's a topic you should put into consideration. Decision authority is always a question too. Who's making the last decision? What are you doing in case of a conflict? What are you doing? Who is responsible for making decisions, and where is your line? All of us have a certain line where we cannot decide, where we have to go to the vice president, to the head of, to the director. Make this sure as well which decisions you can cover and which decisions you cannot cover. Timelines and response time is very important aspect, especially in a intercultural level. Everyone has a very different working attitude and working working ethics. So in some cultures also responding is not common. So it makes sense to speak about this. What is the response time and what is your timeline in general? Another aspect is the data and IP rules, which are also very different from country to country, but also can be handled differently between the universities. So it makes sense to agree on. I give you an example for data rules. We are very strict here in Germany. That always leads to a very big outrage of our information technology service center, which don't like if we use Zoom, who don't like if we use Microsoft, because the server are standing somewhere else. And for data reasons, we have to let everything be signed. So it's not an easy situation because you have a lot of paperwork, but it's the rules. And so everyone has another rule, another standard, and you need to find out if you're matching. Protect the relationship. That is a very, very important part, because if you work close together, you of course will have disagreements, and you will of course experience moments where you're irritated. So one thing is to have the trust in the beginning and to always build on this trust. Don't take it for granted. And to have trust, to build trust, and to develop trust, you also need to get to know the beauty of no. A lot of people don't like to say no, or to say where's the limit, where's the boundary, what is not possible. Often people like to say we manage. That's not good. And having a trusting relationship, you need to be honest and say that is difficult. That will be maybe not possible. I will try, but I cannot promise. You don't have to say the hard no. I don't mean, no, we don't do this. No, we have too much. No, I cannot. This can also be valid, but I also mean to really say honestly where you cannot do so much or what is expected. With this, you put the expectation into place and you don't risk a conflict or a disappointment, because the other side knows where's your limitation and can deal with it, plan with it, and so forth. Communication tools are very important. A lot of people still use emails nowadays. Another part of the world is just using social media to communicate, and you don't get any email response. Some people like to have meetings regular in person, online. Some people don't like this at all. You need to find a communication tool, a regular communication tool that enables you to work efficient. I don't mean a communication tool where everyone can say something and after 3 hours you leave the meeting and no one knows what happened. I mean really something that enables you to not have many misunderstandings, to everyone feels comfortable with contributing the work. You can have easily answers to your questions. That is very important. The same is true for documents. We have a lot of partners who like to work with Gmail Docs, so Google Docs. That is not allowed for us. We have to use different documents. So you have to agree, where do we save the documents? What is the place to work on? Which kind of documents are we working on, and so forth. After rejection, we also put it in, but it's also here a big part for protecting the relationship and building the trust. A failure can also bring together, and a failure that is also seen as a chance can bring together. So if your partnership is only based on, oh, there is a chance, we make this proposal, it didn't work, then it's also not a very stable partnership, because if you have a topic that you're really eager to work in, you will find a way to deal with the after rejection part. However, sometimes you also find that you or your partners make mistakes. So it's very important to develop a mistake culture, to not just say, oh, it went wrong because I didn't see the greatness of our application, but also to look deeply into the application together and the proposal and say, okay, here we could have do it a bit better, or here we didn't understand each other, or so forth. And with this comes a conflict management. Conflicts are normal, and it should be also possible to have a heated discussion, because we are in academia, and it should be a contribution to our proposals, to our work, to also disagree and to also sometimes have a different understanding. Therefore, you need a good culture of discussion. However, sometimes conflicts arose not just from discussions, they arose from different ways of using media, different ways of hearing words, different ways of dealing with problems, with communication, and so forth. There, it's very good to have a main idea how to solve a conflict. We have it often that intercultural conflicts are also a reason why projects are stuck. And to avoid this, it's very important to have a bit an own understanding, and maybe also get a bit deeper into the question of intercultural working in intercultural teams, but also to have an understanding of how to solve conflicts in a good way, and have in the consortium also someone who's maybe then the neutral person to address conflicts. We now already put some of the intercultural management points in the last foil, but it's not easy to differentiate here because they're all coming together. You can always have different kind of differences. There can cultural working related, structural contact related, and they are normal. The problem arises only when they are not discussed. That's a very important part. So the communication about problems is very important, and which you often will find the cultural problems in, the intercultural problems in, is in the hierarchy and decision making. That's very, very different. The way to communicate and which communication time, also how to deal with time and which time you have. So every researcher lives a very complete different life depending on in which country, for which university you are living. You have a lot of different duties, and how you deal with your time and how you deal with time, how you say deadlines and so on, that can create frictions, that can create stress in the communication. And the same is true in the question on how to solve conflicts. Cultures, different cultures work very different in this. On a structural side, you should take into consideration experience. How experienced are your partners with this kind of work form, with this kind of working together on an institutional level, also with these expectations you have? What is your own experience? Do you have enough, or do you see also their limitations? Budget transfer is always an issue, but also how to divide the budget. Transfer is meant that you always have the transfer in a different currency, and then you lose money. And mostly you don't know about these things. You don't think about it when you apply, because it's not on your head. And in the moment you send the money, suddenly 100 euros are gone, because no one considered this. And in the structural context, we realize that for the financial departments, it's always very challenging. So it's good to have them on board when you submit the proposal, that they can already think about it. Administrative systems we spoke about can, from a structural side, has to be considered. They are also very different. And responsibilities. So how you see who's responsible How are the hierarchies in your culture, but also in your institution? So we have clear responsibilities in our university and a very low hierarchy and a lot of points. However, it is always very clear who has to do what and who's responsible. And that needs to be in every institution very clear to work together. As a takeaway, so that we maybe have also a little bit time for questions, I found this a nice quote. Internationalization through research works best when ambition is matched with realism, clear rules, and active intercultural understanding. And I would like to focus on the active also because all of us, we have intercultural experience, but sometimes we forgot that we also have to create an active understanding of it and that we also have to reflect on it again. Clear rules, even when we say, oh no, but I thought it was clear, it's all clear for me, make sure it is clear for the other person as well, that you really speak about the same. And realism, if you have a great idea, still make always a check if it's really possible to do what you're aiming. Is it just a wish or is it really can become reality? Because when you wake up one day and you have this application that is submitted, that gets funding, then you have to do it. And then you will hate yourself, your past self, for not being realistically enough. So that's why I found this is takeaways we can give you. And because it's already a bit late, I would say no, thank you for listening, also in the name of Jakob. And we would just like to give a bit the floor for questions and discussions. If you don't have questions, it's also fine. Otherwise, just I try to see all of you.
I will stop sharing the screen, I guess. Maybe then we see each other better. Yeah, thank you very much, Manuela and Jakob.
I would. I see Ivan is already raising his hand. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation. It was, let's say, very deep, very analytical, and thank you for sharing your personal experience about that. And of course, not restrictions, but maybe like these preparatory steps that ought to be done before actually applying and then implementing something. And I have a question. I have a very, let's say, practical question. And I don't know personally to whom it will be addressed, to Jakob or Manuela. But my question is about, I guess Jakob was presenting this slide about Erasmus Plus, where we're also alliances, but my question is about signing the Erasmus Plus agreements between universities, but not for the student mobility, but only staff mobility. I'm really curious about that because it's maybe even one part of the philosophy of the university, approach of the university. What is your philosophy in that? Are you welcoming this type of agreements? Because, from my point of view, those are really easy to sign and they're not demanding at all. And they're really quite simple to implement. For example, when different staff from different universities, they pay each other these exchange visits and they study the culture of the university. They're not teaching, they're not, like doing research or something like that, but they are there, they're present, and they're exchanging of how I don't know, how to manage the university, how to manage a department, how finances are done at the university. and all about that. So yeah, this is my question. What is your approach toward this, specifically these Erasmus Plus staff mobility agreements?
Manuela, you have more experience here. I let you answer.
Yeah. Actually, we have experience with staff mobility for administration and for also teachers and so forth. We find it very difficult to fulfill expectations on the administration level, because then the people have to really sit next to you on a desk. They need a task, they need the language capacity. You have to give them, when they're coming for 1 week, you have to give them a task for every day, that they are not bored, that they really get an experience. It takes a lot of your time. We did it with some partners and in an international office level, and it helped us that they understand the Erasmus program better, that they understand procedures better, and that on the long term, the relationship was better. So on the example of Ghana, we had a very, very good experience that they really stayed with us every day. We had also partners where it didn't work, where they just came and get an insight in our university and everything, and then they left and didn't apply it. So I worked a long time at a German Jordan university, where the Train the Trainer was a much more developed program to send Jordanian staff to a German partner university for 1 to 3 months. And that makes sense. And you're really working on a desk, you're really getting an insight, you're really getting something out of this. You arrive, you get to know the culture, you get to know the university. For a week or two, that's really, it's like, the train driving through. It's too much at once, we realize. However, if it's possible, we try to offer it, but often our colleagues at the finance department and human resource, they're so overloaded with work, they don't have the capacity or the language skills. So in the future, if we build up on this, it can be interesting, but right now it's very limited. On a teaching level, that's something that works easier because we have the block modules, so they can visit the block modules, they can afterwards also teach in the block modules. Even in a not blocked module, you can have experience, but on this administrative level, it's a challenging part. Interesting, but challenging. However, the Erasmus program offers for European universities the staff weeks, which are also often open for non-European partners. And there are people from one administrative office work in the same field. They come together on certain topics, and then they have an exchange. And this makes also sense. That is something we try to advertise with our staff, for instance, that they go on the staff weeks to have a personal development and get to know how it's done in other universities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is it called, I haven't heard about that. Is it called staff RICS?
Staff weeks.
Weeks. Understood. Understood. Staff weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I speak Ukraine? Я можу говорити українською? Thank you very much. Я хочу подякувати
I just wanted to say thank you for this webinar. For me, I received a lot of new information. I'm working with the team of this university for 4 years, but today I opened up new items for myself, the ones I never thought of before. So many, many thanks both to Jakob, to Manuela for presenting us their information. I would want from myself to clarify one small detail. Our university, I'm working in the Kyiv National Transport University. This university is not so much involved in forest preservation, and maybe your university maybe is not also connected with transportation. How, can we formulate such consortiums? What could be the way forward to make sure that our instructors, professors who are working in this area related to transportation, how could they implement their scientific research in Germany? Nevertheless, that we are a little bit too far from where you are. Maybe you could give us some recommendations for our instructors, for our staff.
I'm Jakob. I think I don't know if you want to start. You opened your mic.
Yes. So this is a very good question. I think there is potential overlap between the activities of our researchers here and questions of transportation, especially when it comes to, well, protecting the landscape when building transportation networks. So I'm sure there is a topic overlap. And now what is needed is a funding program which is actually allowing us to, well, treat this kind of topic. I do not know of an open call for this kind of cooperation. If we do it a little more fundamentally, so if we ask, for example, what are the administrative processes behind building a road, getting permission to build a road through natural territory in Ukraine and in Germany. And we address it from a legal perspective, for example, or an administrative perspective. If we talk about corruption within this process, for example, I think it would be possible to have a bilateral project funded by the German Research Foundation. So that would be one possibility. It would be a very targeted research project on this kind of question. But there is also a possibility for maybe finding a Horizon Europe topic for it. I'm not aware of a topic now, but we could look for one. Sorry, I can't give a more concrete answer now.
Many thanks for this great opportunity that you are helping us to search for it. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, Manuela, do you want to add to this? Or?
No, I just also seeing the time wanted to say that Natalia is also raising her hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe last question, unfortunately. Yeah, would be nice to have more time.
I will also speak Ukrainian. It's easier for me, and you will better understand me. Of course, initiation of such cooperation, as you have mentioned, has two ways: individual contacts and institutional cooperation. So this individual contacts is still the basis for the institutional cooperation, and Erasmus does give such opportunities. We are going back to Erasmus, but in case we are now contemplating about submitting the Erasmus K2, K2 project, and the partners that we talked with from Ukraine, in case they would be interested in the issue, could we turn to you on behalf of this? Could be the project of interaction of international offices. Could we ask you to write up an address so we could contact you, Mr. Jakob and Miss Manuela, maybe email address, she means, so we could contact you later. And I will write up mine.
Yeah, I think Angela will share the presentation with everyone. I thought she will with the participants, and then she can also submit our email address. That is fine. We have also the Center for International Affairs email address, which you can use as well. Then also my colleagues can see it. And Angela sent us also a list of participants. I guess you also have all email addresses. So that we can, I'm sorry, I went into the chat to copy the mail address. I think we have a list from every participant's email. I look at Angela that she nods so that that you have our contacts and we can also see yours.
Yes, definitely. So there will be a follow-up email to all of you. Also, you will all receive a certificate. As I understand, this is always very important for Ukrainian participants. And I will send you the presentation. And also happy to share the email contacts if both of you agree, of course. But as I understand, Manuela and Jakob also thumbs up. Super. Yeah. Then we watch out for an email from me again.
So okay. I don't see hands right now. Then I would like to take the chance of thanking you for following us and for listening to us. It was personally my first webinar, so I will now celebrate with a coffee. I hope it gave you a good insight and we shared a bit our experience, and maybe we hear and see each other soon again. And Angela, thank you for setting everything up and making it so easy for us to present today.
Many thanks also from my side. It was a pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you to the two of you. And thank you to Andrei also for the translation.
Yeah. It worked very well. Thank you.